Oh yeah, plug it into Juan. Where am I gonna see it? It's nice.
So, do you guys have any questions for me?
Would you rather that we spread or that we take time building out arguments?
You spread, you guys spread? For real?
What's spread? What's that?
Aren't you in high school?
What's spread?
How long have you guys debated?
Since last year?
And you guys
Since
spread?
last year, and I'm
Yeah, okay, I do listen.
What's spreading?
What's spread? Yeah, I don't know.
Speech debate. Speaking fast.
Oh.
Okay, so I've actually been around some people, which people spread at the semi-highest level. So yeah, I can keep up if you spread. I really don't care. I don't know if you can actually spread. I'm sorry. But if you can't spread, if you're that confident, I mean, whatever, I don't care.
If you spread, I'll just put it in slow motion on this right here, this camera.
Okay, I'm gonna try to spread.
Hey, what's that mean?
you're gonna try.
She's gonna speak really fast so we don't understand.
What? Why? That's not fair.
Exactly, I thought we were
I
friends.
can barely understand English. What do you want from me?
Also, like for the philosophy and shit. Okay, so I've been debating parliamentary debate for like almost 4 years. I know parliamentary debate is not the same as policy, which is what you guys do, but we're basically almost the same. The only difference is that we don't cite evidence, like those facts that you guys have. We don't use those, we just use the arguments from our heads. So yeah, I can pretty much understand the arguments you're making and the analysis behind it. So that said, since you talked about spreading, so I'm assuming that everybody here is at least semi-high level in this. Based on this tournament, I would really want people to actually clash with each other's arguments, right?
Oh yeah, we got that.
Okay, so I want you to clash. I also want you to do impact weighing or impact analysis on the basis of magnitude, time frame, probability. If you can find another way of weighing the impacts, that's fine by me. Just explain it to me and tell me why that way of weighing the impacts is good. Also, if you think you're winning on an impact on a type of impact analysis like magnitude, where you're losing on time frame, I want you to tell me why magnitude is more important than time frame, right? So, yeah, it's pretty much it. I can listen to anything.
I don't know, like, I don't know half of those things, like crashing or like.
Clashing is just talking about your case. For example, let me explain.
We're knocking down your case. It's like
No, they
when
said,
you wrote down
okay,
an
just tell
analysis.
me when you speak, when you stand up, tell me, hey, they said this, these are the reasons why I think that's false. Or we have 3 main reasons why we think that's false. Things like that. Right? Because what ends up happening is that both teams are so preoccupied with their cases that they completely drop each other's arguments. So I have like to like do everything by myself, right? Like you guys don't tell me like why I should vote for you or why I should vote for the other team. So like I have to like figure out everything there, right? And I think it's more persuasive for the debaters to not leave everything to chance, right? If you don't clash or you don't impact way, you're leaving everything pretty much to me. So if I vote on the other way, you can't be upset because it was your fault for not doing your job properly, right? I'm telling you this because of like you saying, oh, I spread. So I'm like, cool, everybody understands the debate here.
You wanna try?
First. You better be trying to.
You won't fuck with that, friend.
I'm just stick to what I've been doing.
Also, I'll be keeping time as well. I think all of you should keep your own times, but when my timer runs out, you're gonna hear sound, and after that, I'm not gonna keep flowing.
So,
You can keep talking if you want, I will not flow.
so a quick question. Clashing happens between the speeches or is the process? Am I missing something?
It can happen in your speech, it can happen during cross-ex, as long as you bring
Wait. No. I don't take cross-ex into consideration per se. Like I'm not gonna float the cross-ex questions or the cross-ex answers. I think it's good that you brought it up because I'm one of the judges that doesn't take it into consideration. Some judges do, I don't. Right? So yeah, you can clash at the cross-ex level, but then I want you to bring it up and say, look, they said this in your speech. Good. Clashing at the speech level is just telling me what I said. Hey, they said this answer, they said argument X, I have 3 responses, what A, B, C. It's pretty much it.
It's better to bring it up in your speech anyways, because during cross-ex, it's more like you're trying to poke holes into them instead of trying to.
I'll leave the say.
I'm messing with their mind,
This
man.
will be multiplied. You want it?
I'm gonna perform mind tricks. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Okay, so we'll start as soon as you start speaking.
Prep time, how much?
Sorry, wait. Who's the first? Who's the one I see? The name?
When they see Joe.
John?
Joe.
Joe. The first one.
Quick question. Prep time? How much?
6 minutes.
Hey. Shh. Nobody.
Man, you gotta listen, huh? If you wanna do the big, you gotta listen.
Okay, for the drag, first.
The Rodriguez.
I expect an intense fight. Y'all better put up something. Hey, that's a good thing. Relax.
Yes.
Oh, start.
You're
Did we
being-
start? Oh, we did.
Yes, it is right now, so don't embarrass yourself. Hey, Mr. Choli's class. What's up?
Alright.
Oh, okay, so
Wait, question,
I gotta repeat.
do you like us reading more evidence or explaining more?
I don't know how to answer that because I think both are important, right? I think it's good that you give evidence, but I also think it's good that you explain stuff. I mean, you don't have to explain everything to me, especially since you're not spreading, right? So I think maybe a little bit more evidence. It's better because I can keep up. So maybe more evidence, yeah, sure.
You have timers?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Good morning, well, good afternoon. My name is Joe Robles. I am a freshman representing the American Senior High Patriots. I will be representing the affirmative side today, and we're going to talk about when it comes to the ordeal of whether or not the United States federal government should increase its economic and diplomatic engagement of the People's Republic of China over the implementation and enforcement of the agreement made at the 21st Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention. The problem this policy addresses is the harsh impact that climate change has on the world around us, and plans to accomplish this by keeping the global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, and strengthening the ability of countries to deal with the impacts of climate change. This plan also requires that all parties report regularly on their emissions and on their implementation efforts. Failure to implement this policy will highly impact the global temperature rise, increasing it to an intense rate of 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit, or in more areas near the equator, or more in areas near the equator, considering that it was reported by NASA in 2016 that the Arctic Ocean and areas near it, such as Greenland, have reached a temperature difference of 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Climate changes like this can result in drastic scenarios where there's ecological collapses, disruptions to environment, and those who inhabit it, and sea levels rising, which is already a problem on the eastern coast where flooding is becoming common to those who reside there. Luckily, this policy has a clear solution to reach the goals. Parties around the world aim to reach global peaking of greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible to drop the global temperature to 2 degrees Celsius. With all this, all I can say is that the policy will reduce the effects of climate change on Earth in mass with its plan to reduce greenhouse gases. Contention 1, inherency. President-elect, well, now President Trump, does not believe in man-made climate change. He will prevent enforcement of the Paris Agreement in the U.S., and this will collapse confidence momentum, dooming global implementation, making warming of 3.6 Fahrenheit inevitable. Davenport, 2016. Trump has called human-caused climate change a hoax. He vowed to dismantle the Environmental Protection Agency in almost every form. But if President Trump makes good on his campaign promises, experts in climate change policy warn that the legacy will unravel quickly. The world then may have no way to avoid the devastating consequences of global warming, including rising sea levels, extreme droughts, food shortages, and the more powerful floods and storms. Mr. Trump, or President Trump, has already vowed to cancel last year's Paris Climate Agreement, which commits more than 190 countries to reduce their emissions of planet-warming carbon dioxide pollution. President Trump cannot legally block other countries from fulfilling their Paris Agreement commitments, nor can he quickly or unilaterally erase Mr. Obama's climate rules. But he can, as president, choose not to carry out the Paris Plan in the United States, and he could so substantially slow or weaken the enforcement of Mr. Obama's rules that they would have little impact on reducing emissions in the U.S., at least during Mr. Trump's term. This could doom the Paris Agreement's goals of reaching carbon dioxide emissions enough to stave off an atmospheric warming of at least 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, the point at which many scientists say that the atmospheric warming, the planet will be locked into an irreversible future of extreme and dangerous warming. Without the full participation of the U.S., the world's second largest greenhouse gas polluter after China, that goal is probably unattainable, even if every other country follows through on its pledges. Mr. Oppenheimer, which is a researcher on climate change, and other climate policy experts say that all major emitters need to take action in the near term to stave off the 3.6 degree increase. Scientific reports released over the last 2 years have concluded that the immeasurable warming of the planet because of human activities has already begun. This year is on track to be the hottest on record, lasting past the previous record set in 2015 and 14. But absent the expected policy actions in the United States under the Trump administration, scientists at Climate Interactive said the path of emissions reductions will be much more difficult to maintain. In China, the world's largest greenhouse gas polluter, climate change officials say they intend to continue with plans to cut carbon emissions regardless of Mr. Trump's plans. Xi Jinping has vowed under the Paris Agreement that Chinese emissions will drop after 2030. And that Secretary of State Kerry earlier is that tackling climate change is something nobody asks us to do. It's something we want to do. But in India, the world's third largest greenhouse gas polluter, the election of President Trump has raised doubts about a willingness to move forward. Indian officials have made clear that their steps to cut emissions will depend on financial aid from rich countries. But President Trump has already vowed to cut off all global warming payments. I think most certainly it will affect momentum in negotiations because it throws up a lot of questions. The United States federal government should substantially increase its economic and diplomatic engagement with the People's Republic over the implementation and enforcement of the agreement made at the 21st Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Paris through a bilateral framework. Advantages such as halting climate changes is not critical to keeping warming below 4 degrees Celsius. If left unchecked, warming will cause sea level rise, species loss, crop failures, threatening extinction. Klein, 2014. As global.
Okay, open for crossing.
Okay, so what is the cost of your plan?
The what?
The cost of your plan?
As the cost, well, that hasn't been determined yet, as first we need to determine what our goals are. Right now, our goals is to reduce the emissions, but we haven't really found out a plan on how. Well,
So you don't know how your, like, the implementations of your plan?
we know, but before we can determine the cost, we need everybody on the same page. We can't determine the cost like freehand, and then when everyone joins in, can't cover it.
Wouldn't you agree that before proposing a plan, you should build implementations economically and politically of your own plan?
Well, this is a plan that includes not just one nation, many others. So to enact a plan this globally is going to require everyone, hence the word global.
So how will your plan directly solve the issues of global warming?
Well, it plans to have all parties regulate their CO2 emissions, and even comes to the point where some will come to a certain point where they want tax factories on CO2 emissions.
How would you do that independently?
Not really. It's going to take an effort because it's not like a group effort. We can't have one pass this, another pass this, because it's all going to be towards the same cause.
Well, why can't we just work independently, tax our own factories, have them tax their own?
Well, okay, so there is already organizations working independently, but those are helping. That's why this plan is made, so we can have more people on it. We need actual nations on this. We can't cover it all by ourselves.
Aren't China's gas emissions peaked?
We haven't talked about that.
But aren't they?
She's just asking a question.
We haven't.
It's general knowledge.
Well, in this case, it can peak, but who says that that's going to stop there? Never said that it's going to keep going down. It can also go up.
It actually stated that it has peaked and are decreasing, so.
But that doesn't mean it's going to keep decreasing. It's still a problem there, isn't it? And it's still one of the world's largest, one of the 3 largest polluters in the world.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Samantha Rodriguez, and I'll be representing the first half of the negative case. Okay. My first part is the plan is not necessary. China's CO2 emissions have peaked and are decreasing, green 2016. something quite remarkable is happening in China. The country's coal use grew at more than 8% per year between 2000 and 2013. But in 2014, coal use barely grew at all, and then it actually fell by more than 3% in 2015. The decline is good news for the world, as it meant the country's carbon dioxide emissions fell by up to 2% in 2015. 2014 could turn out to have been the peak for China's carbon dioxide emissions. Moving on to my next part. Climate change will be slow and is more than a decade away. There's no need to drastically act now, Riley 2015. The climate change debate has been polarized. Either global warming is real, as former President Barack Obama thinks, or it's a hoax, as Oklahoma Senator James thinks. There is a third possibility, that it is real, man-made, and not dangerous, at least not for a long time. This lukewarm option has been boosted by recent climate research, and if it is right, current policies may do more harm than good. For example, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations and other bodies agree that the rush to grow biofuels justified as decarbonization measures has raised food prices and contributed to rainforest destructions. Since 2013, aid agencies such as U.S. Overseas Private Investigation Corporation and the World Bank and European Investment Bank have restricted funding for building fossil fuel plants in Asia and Africa. That has slowed progress in bringing electricity to 1 billion people who live without it, and the 4 million who die each year from the effect of cooking over wood fires. In 1990, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, was predicting that global average temperatures would rise at the rate of about 0.3 degrees Celsius per decade. In the 25 years since, temperatures have risen at about 0.1 to 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade. The IPCC, in its most recent assessment report lowered its near-term forecast for the global mean surface temperature. That is a warming of 0.1 to 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade in all scenarios, including high-emission ones. Moving on to my next part. No evidence of biodiversity loss from climate change. The IPCC retracts its finding about species loss, Watts 14. One article claimed that humans are turning the Earth into a lonely and very dangerous planet. IPCC admissions from new report, no evidence climate change has led to even a single species becoming extinct, along with the snail that was supposed to be the first extinct animal due to global warming that suddenly wasn't. From mammals to deep-sea shark fossils, expanding 5 continents and 2 oceans, these discoveries add to the family tree of life on Earth in 2014. Researchers added a whopping 221 new plants and animals species to our family tree. This results published in 64. Their results published in 64 different scientific papers helped advance the Academy's research into 2 of the most important scientific questions of our time: how did life evolve, and how will it persist? The global action fails. The Paris Accord is just rhetoric, and at best, it would reduce less than 0.5 degree warming by 2100. Bloomberg 2016. The Paris Accord talks a big game. The text says the world's leaders commit to keeping the increase well below 2 degrees Celsius. But this is just rhetoric. My peer-reviewed assessment of the Paris Agreement used the nation's model to measure the impact of every nation fulfilling every major carbon-cutting promise in the treaty between now and 2030. I found that the total temperature reduction will be just 0.086 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100. Even if these promises were extended for 70 more years, then all the promises would reduce temperature rises by 0.3 degrees Fahrenheit. It's feasible, yet we will hear claims that the treaty will do a lot more. It seems foolhardy to predict that governments will suddenly become drastically more ambitious 15 years from now. Moving to my next part. Political backlash to climate change policies ensures a lack of political support or enforcement. Sonnet 2015. But it's not clear if China has the might to win the warm population on its own shores, let alone commit to the goal and standards set by outsiders. Despite pollution falling, China's environmental ministry reported that 66 of China's 74 major cities still fall below the acceptable national standard for air quality. Now, summary of the process.
Do you believe that global warming poses no threat to humanity?
No, I don't. I think it's something that's happening now, but it's not something that needs to be. It's something we should work on. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying that it's not something that we should work on with China.
So we should work on it.
Yeah, we should work on it, but not with China. I'm sorry.
So you think that there are bigger threats than mass human extinction?
I don't understand that. I said we should work on it, but
No,
not with
I'm
China.
asking you a question. Do you believe that there are greater problems than climate change?
The negative argument states that climate change is real, that it's a threat, but you shouldn't go through with your plan.
Yeah.
But climate change will eventually lead to mass human extinction. Do you believe that there's something greater than that?
No,
there's
the
not.
negative argues that climate change is real, that all those things are true. However, we shouldn't go through with your plan.
We shouldn't work with China. That's what we're arguing.
And what he's trying to argue is that without China, we're still going to face these problems.
Okay, and we want to work on it, but we do not want to work on it with China. We're not saying don't work on it. We're just saying we don't agree with your plan of working on it with China.
Okay, you stated that it may not be a threat, at least not for a long time. So you're admitting that this will become a problem.
Yes, it will become a problem. That problem is currently evolving, but I mean, it's not.
The problem just shouldn't be tackled with China.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on why China shouldn't work with the US on this problem?
Because we should work independently, so that way we can focus on our own problems before trying to work with China. Because
So such a global problem as this, you don't think we should work on it in a global scale with as many countries as we can?
no, I don't.
You don't?
This is all we can get. Just mention it just a little. You got it. We can't mention it later on. Just mention it. Yeah.
As global warming approaches and exceeds 2 degrees Celsius, there is a risk of triggering nonlinear tipping elements. Examples include the disintegration of West Antarctic ice sheet, leading to more rapid sea level rise, or large-scale Amazon dieback, drastically affecting ecosystem, rivers, agriculture, energy production, and livelihoods. Impact entire countries, and allow temperatures to climb past a certain point. 4 degrees Celsius warming, 7.2 degrees Fahrenheit is incompatible with unorganized, equitable, and civilized global community. We don't know exactly what a 4 degrees Celsius world would look like, but even the best case scenario, is likely to be calamitous. 4 degrees of warming could raise global sea level by 1 or possibly even 2 meters by 2100. Brutal heat waves that can kill tens of thousands of people would become entirely unremarkable summer events on every continent but Antarctica. The heat would also cause staple crops to suffer dramatic yield losses across the globe. when demand will be surging due to population growth and growing demand for meat. When you add ruinous hurricanes, raging wildfires, fisheries, collapses, widespread disruptions to water supplies, extinctions, and globe-trotting diseases to the mix, it indeed becomes difficult to imagine that a peaceful, ordered society could be sustained. And keep in mind that there are the optimistic scenarios in which warming is more or less stabilized at 4 degrees Celsius and does not trigger tipping points beyond which runaway warming would occur. 4 degrees could bring about a number of extremely dangerous feedback loops. Once this happens, any hope of predicting impacts pretty much goes out the window. This likely spells down for the entire West Antarctic ice sheet, which, with a sea level rise between 3 and 5 meters, which comes with a sea level rise between 3 and 5 meters, such an event will displace millions of people worldwide. The disintegration, however, could unfold over centuries, and there is still time for emission reductions to slow down the process and prevent the worst. Plenty of mainstream analysts think we are headed for even more than 4 degrees of warming. We are actually on track for 6 degrees Celsius. This will have catastrophic implication for all of us. 6 degrees of warming is likely to set in motion several major tipping points, like massive releases of methane from Arctic permafrost. Climate change has become an existential crisis for the human species. The only historical precedent for a crisis of this depth and scale was a Cold War fear that we were headed toward nuclear holocaust, which would have made much of the planet uninhabitable. But that was and remains a threat. President Trump's plan to withdraw from the Paris Agreement would pave the way for China to fill the role as a global climate change leader. Volkovitsky and Juan, 2016. Trump, as president, is likely to end the U.S. relationship role in the international fight against global warming and may lead to the emergence of a new and unlikely champion, China. China worked closely with Obama to build momentum ahead of the 2015 Paris Agreement on climate change. The partnership of the two biggest greenhouse gas emitters helped get nearly 200 countries to support the pact at France's capital. The Paris Agreement seeks to phase out net greenhouse gas emissions by the second half of the century and limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels. China is acting on climate for the benefit of its own people. I am confident China will take a lead role. China has powerful domestic and global imperatives to play a high-profile role in continued global climate change talks, meant to avert more heat waves, droughts, floods, and rising sea levels that could cause trillions of dollars of damage by 2100. Dealing with the pressures of continued urbanization in some of the world's largest cities has already put China ahead. Beijing is innovating to build low-carbon cities. It sees carbon as an indicator of economic inefficiency. Engaging China over climate change is key to broader cooperation. Hart 2014. Cooperation on energy and climate issues serves a critical role that goes far beyond the energy and climate space. The energy and climate track has become the undisputed anchor for the bilateral relationship. The anchor should be protected against future political shifts in either nation. The solvency is China and the US are the two largest emitters, which creates a unique momentum to address climate change globally. Further, bilateral engagement is key. Achieve the goals set by the Paris Agreement. Adi et al. 2016. Given that China and the United States are the world's two largest GHG emitters, the momentum that already exists with respect to bilateral cooperation on climate change and clean energy technologies and the completion of the Paris Agreement at COP21 is important to explore opportunities for and challenges to furthering this cooperation. When then climatologists speaking out about the dangers of global warming, the answer is that virtually all of us are now convinced that global warming poses a clear and present danger to civilization.
Um, how long under your plan will it take to solve climate change?
How long? It all depends on, it would all depend on how we're working together. Because if we actually pay attention to how we're going to work together, we can solve it in about, I would say, 10 years, a decade.
One decade?
In a
Question,
decade.
how are you gonna solve something that you don't even have like a proper plan?
No, okay. It begins in 10 decades. It would start to get worse. If we start from about 10 decades, I would say it would take about.
Okay, but my question is, how would you work on something when your plan, you don't have, didn't they say that how they know how to proceed? How would you proceed when you don't know how you're gonna exactly do, how those steps are, like, that you don't have steps to go to work on it?
This plan is the basis for what's continuing. This is called what you call the main stepping stone. The plan is going to continually be developed, but first we need everyone on board.
How are you gonna get everyone on board when you don't have a plan of action to actually proceed with?
Hope everyone wants to live. We're talking about multiple lives.
Yes,
here.
this is a mass.
This is a-
mass extinction. This can cause mass extinction of the human race.
If you really think about it, it's either you want to live or not. And I'm pretty sure everyone does.
Remember, sea levels are rising. There's so many things. There's
Miami's
water
gonna go
shortages.
under.
Okay, we get that climate change is a real thing, but should it be tackled in this manner? That's the question.
Yes. How else would you tackle such a global scale?
I think
Working independently could be one.
Working independently.
Yes.
You believe that would work? How would it work?
Well, the thing is that competition brings excellence, don't you think?
Competition brings excellence.
Yes.
not in this part. In this type of way, it's more like we got to keep everything in check. So, and this is, like I said multiple times, this is a multiple group effort, and I guess I'll finish the statement. And to have everyone on this, it's not one person doing it or one nation doing it alone. There has to be multiple reports. You got to know what this place is doing, what this place is doing, and if we're doing a good progress, because then we just don't know what progress is.
Okay. Thank you. Do it.
What was that?
Okay, so good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Wilson Mello, and I'll be representing the second negative part for this debate. First and foremost, the United States must not substantially increase its diplomatic engagements with the Republic of China. This is because China cannot enforce reductions, and the plan is not necessary. The time frame for global warming is too long, further decreasing the magnitude of the situation. Although global warming is a real threat, we, the negative side, argue that climate change has to be solved by other means. Other key points that are used are that there are no loss of biodiversity because the IPCC has retracted its statements, global action fails, and the Paris Accord is just rhetoric. Economic slowdown is equal to instability, reforms are key to China economy, and China is cracking down on shadow banking now, and there are much more points. The affirmative side has so far stated that they don't even know the cost of their plan, so why would we go through something if we're not even sure how it's going to follow through? Moving forward with my next point, Chinese emissions and reduction commitments are not substantial enough to change climate outcomes, Lambert 2016. China's INDC has made two significant promises. One is that a promise to peak its emissions around 2030, and in this article, the other promise seeks to reduce China's CO2 intensity 60 to 65%. As baseline emissions, we find that without policy change, China will only reduce its CO2 intensity by 54% by 2030. Reducing it to 60% will require a further 1.9 GT CO2 emissions cut by 2030, and by 2100, it will result in a reduction in temperature rise of 0.48 degrees Celsius in the optimistic case and a 0.014 degrees Celsius in the pessimistic case, with an average of 0.031 degrees Celsius. This card shows how we cannot trust China because they have been making promises that they cannot, and they have not been willing to keep. Furthermore, even if climate change is happening, new studies prove a weaker cooling effect for aerosols than previously understood, which means warming would be that bad. That's 2016. A major scientific study conducted at the University of Reading on the interactions between aerosols and clouds is much weaker than most climate models assume, meaning that the planet could warm way less than they predicted. The effects of anthropogenic aerosols on clouds are going to have large implications for climate change projections, substantially lowering future temperature rise expectations. Pauline wrote that there are reasons to expect that aerosol cloud interactions are weaker than simulated by climate models, and perhaps even weaker than the preliminary estimate. It may be that aerosol cloud interactions are lost in the noise of natural variability and cloud processes, but for such a large perturbation, the impacts are surprisingly hard to isolate. Pauline wrote, for decades, scientists assumed aerosols, mostly emitted from coal plants, had a sizable cooling effect on the planet, but that might not be the case. It is fact that aerosols don't have much of a cooling effect. The planet is not as sensitive to increases in greenhouse gas emissions. That means that less warming, less enhanced cloud cooling means that greenhouse gases have produced less warming than the climate models have determined, Michaels and Knappenberger wrote. Another way to put this is that this new finding implies that the Earth's climate sensitivity, how much the Earth's surface will warm from a doubling of the pre-industrial atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration, is much below than that of the average climate model. Forecasts and species loss have been overestimated by Juan in 2014. Global warming is said to be threatening thousands of animals and plant species with extinction. That, at least, is what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has been predicting for years. But the UN climate body now says it is no longer so. A classified draft of the report notes that a further increased extinction risk for a substantial number of species during and beyond the 21st century is to be expected. The IPCC admits that there is no evidence that climate change has led to even a single species being extinct thus far. So this goes against what the affirmative has been saying about climate change having effects on species loss and much more. Their worst case scenarios are unsubstantiated alarmism. The best evidence demonstrates that that is not as bad as we thought, Lambro 2015. This is my next card, by the way. It is an indisputable fact that carbon emissions are rising. Climate change alarmists claim that all climate change is worse than expected. This ignores that much of the data are actually encouraging a one-sided focus on worst-case stories is a poor foundation for said policies. Yes, sea levels are rising, but there's a rise not accelerating. We are often being told that we're seeing more and more droughts, but a study in the journal Nature actually shows a decrease in droughts since 1982. We are currently in 2017, and this is saying that there has been a decrease in droughts since 1982. Hurricane damage during the period of the 1900s to 2013 has decreased as well. We're told that things are worse than ever, but the facts don't support this. This is important because if we want to help the poor people who are getting threatened by natural disasters, we have to recognize that this is less about cutting carbon emissions than it is about pulling them out of poverty. Moving forward, the lack of real progress in Paris Agreement proves that global action will work. Borsman, Ebinger, 2016. Incremental, not transformative progress, although important building blocks may have been put in place, we are not necessarily convinced that this is a breakthrough agreement. We observe that the agreement does not contain more than a vague indications of desired GHG emissions reductions in the long term. Stronger language would have to be a clear message that business as usual cannot continue. No such signal was sent. Moving forward, Paris was not a breakthrough, it was a saving face, cast 2015. So as negotiators worked late into the night, the haggling was not over how to cut emissions. The US fought with China and India over whether the later two should even have to report transparently about their ever-rising emission levels. But celebrating the result as a breakthrough makes a mockery of the campaign to act on climate, and results the intelligence of millions of people. It's as if President Kennedy had quietly revised his goal to be putting a man on my lawn. Negotiators could have redefined their goal to be achieving something like Paris and then quickly reached it. This is called saving face, not saving the world. My next point is that alternate casualty, not U.S. domestic action to decrease climate change solves the case. China is waiting on the U.S. to act. Must be in Shidor 2015. Thank you.
You're okay, process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You say that there has not been any species loss, correct?
Yes.
Well, there has. Okay.
Okay. What year did the evidence come? What year did you get that evidence from? What year was it from?
Well, that evidence is from the 2014.
2014. Isn't that quite outdated? We're now in 2017. You don't believe that much can happen in 3 years?
Well, once a draft is from 3 years before.
No, but this in specific. You're saying that there has been no species loss. In fact, there has been.
Okay, so for example of species loss, there's been there's been more multiple, but here's some known species that went extinct due to climate change.
What's the question?
We already asked you it, but we're stating that there.
That wasn't correct because orange jellyfish and coral reefs have been extinct.
Okay,
Okay. Do you believe that China would ever ratify the Paris Accord? Do you believe that China would ever ratify the Paris Accord? So you do believe that they would ratify the China, so they would work with the US?
And everything will be on board with it.
Well, not necessarily, because
But didn't you just say why not? So
okay, the issue is not a matter of China being able to work with the US, it's a matter of the other outcomes.
what other outcomes? Can you be more specific?
Okay, look, if China works with the US to solve climate change, there are different effects to this. Like economically, we're already in debt with China. So even if they're willing to work with us, we could be losing money with your plan. As you stated, you don't even know how much it costs. Moving forward, in a political scale, we might get into disagreements with how to work with things and get into fights with China or even Japan. Thank you.
Prep time, 3 minutes.
Do you need more?
One more minute. Wait a minute.
he's 2 in C? You're 2 in C? Wait, doesn't that mean 1 in art goes next? Am I missing something?
Yeah, you're right, yeah. You're supposed to go.
So, wrong persons.
Yeah. What about that?
I was wondering, like, there was something missing.
Oh, yeah.
Would you look at that?
I would just say.
I guess that shouldn't count that time down for it.
What?
I guess that shouldn't count the prep time down.
I mean, it's the prep time for them too, so I guess it doesn't matter.
No, just don't count.
Nah, just don't count. Just don't count. It's a free time.
Yeah. Let's roll with it.
I don't know.
Yes, sir. Okay, I would like to add something that I found out from a previous round. The U.S. Supreme Court agreed with Trump on how they it was on how we can he wants to back out of the Paris Agreement, and he can do that. I know it says legally, but there is a loophole where he has a year to get out of it. So technically, we can back out of it. So there's no commitment there. So the reason their plan isn't necessary is because China's CO2 emissions have peaked. So the reason we should work independently instead of working with China is because why focus on someone else's problems and instead of focusing on our own? Why should we work with a country that they're not reliable, they're not they're just not reliable. And also climate change is slow. So yes, it is happening now. We're not saying it's not, so don't twist my words. It is happening now. We've already passed that 3.5 degrees brink, so we obviously can't hold back on it. There's no point in that. There's no point in wasting time and eventually killing off humanity. Okay, so there's no evidence of biodiversity loss from climate change, like I said, and the IPCC has retracted their statement, so there's no real credibility there, so we shouldn't trust what they say, because clearly they don't know what they're saying. They've taken back what they've said. And like I said, the Paris Agreement is, they're not really pulling through because they said that they would reduce, they would at best reduce less than 0.5 degrees warming by 2100, but why would they take 15 years? That's what my cards say, to take ambition then. That's also the magnitude and the probability of that they're I feel like their plan would be way too expensive because they don't even have their own they don't have the steps to take to go through with the plan. They don't know what they're going to do. They're just stating something. They just want everyone on board, but how would they pull through without any steps to take, without knowing exactly what they're going to make happen? without knowing what they're gonna do. And also their plan would be completely not a good choice because it would ruin our economy. It would, because we don't know how much we would spend, we would be wasting time on working with China. How much time do I have left?
1 minute, 1 second. You don't have to speak over.
Yeah, you can put it on.
Alright, so, yeah, that's all the reasons why I believe you should vote for the negative, because
Congratulations. They just say everything. Don't focus on reading, just.
I know, but I'm looking at my notes. Alright, yeah. I don't know what's, yeah.
No crossing separate. Okay, yes.
I'm not the
Okay.
My brain just got fried, that's what I do.
Let me get the paper real quick.
My name is Joe Robles. Once again, I am representing the affirmative side, and I'm going to do 1AR right now. So first, I'm going to talk about what the negative side has mentioned so far. The 2NC first stated that we would face problems if we were to become part of this plan along with China, and that these problems would be caused between us and Japan. And when she means problems, I'm pretty sure that right now how it is between Japan and China, and if we were to get involved, there could be some war in between. That's not the problem though. See, as of October last year, the United States, Japan, and China all ratified the Paris Accord Agreement. And it has been months then, and even after the transfer of position to Trump, he still to this day has not regretted his decision. They haven't backed out at all, which has also been stated by the second, who also said that it's possible to back out. When the power is transferred, by the first NC, but when the power is transferred, Trump made a statement on PRL, which is Public Relations website, so that he won't disagree with it, and that he'll keep the ratification process going. So continuing on, they said that this probably won't work out, as for the negative side, they're supposed to go against it. But actually, 143 parties out of 197 have already ratified it as of November. So that's a really staggering number considering now. And to move on, they made statements saying how the climate change doesn't affect biodiversity, but there has been a wide amount of species that are affected. There's been coral reefs, not just here in Miami, but even I know 3 coral reefs in Australia that are being affected by climate change. And moving along, they also talked about how it's a waste of time, but in reality, climate change isn't a waste of time. If anything, it's good that we start on this now, because this isn't just one nation we're talking about. It's the whole world. It's humanity. And calling it a waste of time is really ignorant. And I feel like that was a statement that shouldn't be really provided, considering that this is something that's more or less can affect the entire world. Human extinction, if you want to call it. Even worse than what we're facing now with other countries and threats. So, how much time? 1 minute? Okay. So, to finish off, well, not finish off, to continue, they all should be part of this, mainly because, well, as far as we know, there's already 143 parties that ratified it. We already can tell from United Nations Corporation website that the United States, India, China, North Korea, and Japan have all joined in on the boat for this Paris Accord agreement. Now, considering how they're like, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, you can see how Trump actually came to a decision, seeing how India said that they required payment in order to join the ratification process. But somehow, in the end, that means that Trump agreed with it and he went along with it because he also ratified it. And that means to this day, they're all part of this process, and this plan is basically the stepping stones to a better world. Yeah, no problem.
Huh? Your 6 minutes?
Here. Can I get water?
Actually, no, I'd rather everybody stay here until we're done.
Got it.
And you can tell somebody to get your water. You can tell him to get your water if you want.
All right, Mr. here.
Mr. Runner,
Mr. Runner.
You got the sweatpants on, go.
Wait.
Come on, Mr. Runner, look at. You got change for a 20, boy? Mr. Runner? You actually has change for 20, yes? Oh. Just buy it for me and I'll pay you back. Yeah. Okay, I got you. Forget it. Bro, shit. It's prep time. Juan.
So I am once again also Rebecca talking about the negative side to this case. In it, we discuss that China and the U.S. should not increase their diplomatic relations to solve the matter of global warming. According to China's IPC, they have made two promises so far. One was a promise that by 2030 they would have peaked. However, this falls outside the 2030 time limit for their policy promises. The other promise was to seek a CO2 reduction from China by 60 to 65%. Yet, research shows that without a change in policy, China will only reduce its emissions by 54% by 2030. So why would we work with someone who continues to fail? They continue to mess up and there's no credibility. They have obviously shown that they cannot commit, so why would we form an alliance? Here's what we know. China has already made attempts by themselves to combat the issue of global warming, and a lot of money would be needed to implement the affirmative plan. However, the affirmative themselves do not even know how much money it will take. In fact, since the affirmative doesn't even know how much money it's going to take, they're proposing a plan and do not know the cost for it. This plan that they're proposing, it could put us in debt, well, even more debt. And those are some of the effects that they are not even looking at. This debate has so far consisted of the affirmative side arguing about the effects of climate change, and as a negative, we agree that climate change is an issue. However, we think that it should be tackled through different means. We think we should and we have to work on this matter independently rather than working with China, because we do not even trust China. And money is an important thing when it comes to the world. Money makes the world go round, and the affirmatives should not win because they are unsure of the effects of their plan. So for impact calculus, the magnitude of climate change it is not necessarily important right now. We understand climate change is an issue, but it is not necessarily a big thing. The time frame, when comparing the two sides of this argument, is that our time frame is better than theirs because they think that by 2030 they'll be seeing some changes. However, that is assuming that all goes well. Anyone that has ever had to work as a team can agree that it takes a long time to have everyone agree on one thing. In politics, it takes a long time to get things into action. If we were to work independently, we can take matters into our own hands and perhaps see major improvements by 2030 rather than some changes as the informative proposes. So if we really want to tackle climate change right now, then we can, well, the magnitude of the situation will decrease as our time frame decreases, rather than your time frame, which will take even longer, and the magnitude will dreadfully decrease over time. So if there were to be a China-US relationship, we would not be able to trust China because of their credibility. So even if things could happen, there are unforeseen consequences of the plan. Moving forward, slow renewables means that China will fall behind inevitably for 2015. China may not meet targets. There are doubts, however, that China will be able to hit some of its ambitious targets for renewable energy use, even though the country's investments in renewables lead the world, accounting for nearly 30% of the world's total renewable investments, according to hydro and nuclear sources by 2030. To do so, China will have to install the equivalent of all electricity so the United States generates today, just in renewable sources. That will require wind and solar installations at double the current pace. That means that their plan is going to cost much more than what they think it is, and since we're already in debt and our money is part of the world trade, we could lead to another recession that has already occurred in the past. Deep emission reductions in China are not even possible, according to Adams 2015. China made grand promises about rebalancing its economy. Thank you.
Wait. How much time we got left? Make sure you don't want to check one last thing, you should. Oh.
Good afternoon. The topic for our debate is that the United States federal government should offer the People's Republic of China the launch of the U.S.-China Partnership on Energy and Climate Change. Okay, first of all, let's get something straight. Climate change has so many problems that will affect us. Climate change causes resources to drop. This is one very important thing that happens with this. If the resources were to drop, most of the wars that occur are due to resources. Most of the conflicts occur due to resources. The sooner we solve the problems, this problem, the less likely it is for it to occur. Those are also, as in said by Speaker Juan, it said that we must work individually in order to solve our own problems. Explain this. It was not very clear because this is a global issue. This is not a personal issue. This is something that will actually affect everybody else. This is mass extinction. This will ultimately cause mass extinction. Money is not the problem when the entire world, as we know, may go extinct. They kept on speaking about the debt that this will cause. Well, there's not. What's the point in money if we're all going to die? There's no point in money. The easiest way to stop this, it has to be by joining forces with another of the major greenhouse gas emitters. If we allow for every country to go their own to do their own thing, it is not unlikely that they will not do anything to help. And once again, if not everyone is trying to cut CO2 emissions, then it will be useless to even try to do something, as it requires everybody to do something. And the best way to ensure that all the countries are cutting their CO2 emissions is to work together, and that definitely includes China. You also have to consider that we are currently living in Miami, and we're currently living in Miami, so we're close to water. So climate change will also affect the rise in sea level, which will ultimately affect us, and it will affect everybody as well eventually. The speaker in the second rebuttal stated that they both agree on the change. They both agree that the change is a problem. So if it is a problem, wouldn't you have to agree that everybody has to work together? They have already stated that it's a problem. So we need everything. We have to do everything in our ability to actually be able to get to have this over with, to try to do something about this, because the later it is, the more unlikely it is for us to be able to to actually help out with the problem. Okay. All right.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, cool. Do you want me to give you feedback like right now?
Wait, hold on, stay like that. Okay, look, this is why I was laughing.
Hey!
Yo.
Do you want the feedback or not?
Relax.
All right. You want it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
She don't want to stop.